The Nissan Z-Car is one of the few Japanese heritages whose legendary status can't be argued. It has fans that span across 9 generations of the car. But there are some Zs that are more legendary than others. Vying for a spot at the top of the list of most important Z-Cars of all time is the Z32, the 4th generation of the Z-Car and 2nd generation of the 300ZX. The press and public hounded Nissan for years to recapture the essence of the first Z, the 240Z. It was a pure sports car and rough around the edges. And while there were a lot of people who wanted that, it mostly put consumers off. Nissan's response was to up the horsepower while adding creature comforts. Their goal was to get as close to a supercar as they could while still selling on a sports car budget. But that's a battle of give and take that's easier said than done. And it's not one that many outside of Nissan believed they won. When the Z32 debuted in 1989, it shocked the world. Nissan had done it. They had actually done it. The new 300ZX was stylish, comfortable, nimble, and above all else, powerful. No compromise had been made. Nissan had achieved their stated goal. And this time, the press and the public agreed. Is it the best Z-Car of all time? Well, let's dive into the design, development, and legacy of one of the biggest legends of the 1990s import scene, and then you can decide for yourself. If the Z31 was a Nintendo, then the Z32 was a Super Nintendo. It was bigger, it was better, and it was faster. I'm Rick Pierce, a car nerd that loves history and wants to share some car history nerdery. Welcome to Make a Model. The predecessor of the Z32 was not the Z31. Well, yeah, okay, it was, but it was only half of its lineage. The other half comes from Nissan's mid-engine concept vehicles. You heard me right, mid-engine. A decade before Toyota released the mid-engine MR2, Nissan unveiled its 81 prototype at the 1975 Tokyo Motor Show, demonstrating that a Japanese manufacturer could create a mid-engine sports car. Nissan insists the 81 was simply a styling exercise, but multiple full-size vehicles were built, fully upholstered and with badging in place. They don't usually include badging on concepts. This would indicate the 81 had been in development for at least a couple of years before being unveiled. As far along as the 81 was, it never entered production, and for a while seemed to almost vanish from history, as users on early bulletin boards attempted to track down any evidence it even existed. Some speculated references were typos, or that it was just a legend. While the 81 bears subjectively little resemblance to the Z32 we're discussing in today's video, though not totally different, just look at those rectangular headlights with an enclosed face, upright lenses, and black inner shroud. Its lineage becomes more apparent taking a look at what the 81 led to, the Mid-4. The Mid-4 remains to this day one of those models that, when brought up, hushes a conversation into conspiratorial tones. Someone will eventually say, "Can you believe it never went to production?" Because, like the 81, it was pretty advanced for a concept. It had finished upholstery, and it was all-wheel drive. It even had Nissan's new 4-wheel steering system called Hicus. Under the hood was a new modified version of the VG30E used in the Z31, now called a VG30DE. Looking at it, it's pretty easy to see that a lot of the Mid-4's design is drawn from the Z31 300ZX that had just come out. It looks like the team that developed the Mid-4 prototype and later the Z31 Kuki model shared some overlap. This is my own speculation, but I have a feeling the Mid-4 was originally begun as an effort to design a mid-engine Z-Car. That means this was possibly the original Z32 concept. The Mid-4 continued to be kicked around at Nissan, with Nissan leadership never giving it the green light. If it was originally intended to become a Z32, That decision quickly changed as the Z32 received its own development team shortly before the Mid-4 was originally unveiled. Still, work continued, and an updated version of the Mid-4, the Mid-4 2, was shown off at the 1987 Tokyo Motor Show. Beautiful. And apparently Honda and Toyota took notes. Powering the Mid-4 2 was the VG30DETT, a twin-turbo version of the VG30DE found in the first Mid-4. While the Mid-4 2 was still never greenlit, the same can't be said for the VG30DETT. Remember that engine, folks. It'll be coming back. A year after the Z31 hit showroom floors, Nissan was looking towards its replacement. Real quick, if you're enjoying this content and you'd like to see more videos just like it, make sure to hit subscribe. In the fall of 1984, Nissan assigned the task of creating the next Z-Car to Katsuo Yamada, head of the Product Planning and Marketing Group No. 4 at the Nissan Technical Center. He selected Isao Sono to be chief designer because of his work on the Z31. The very first thing Sono did was to travel to America to get a feel for the type of consumers Nissan was targeting, as the Z-Car was still operating under the philosophy that it was a car designed and built for Americans in mind, and to meet with the team at Nissan Design International in San Diego. NDI had grown quite a bit since operating out of a converted two-story house in La Jolla in 1979. They were now a premier design studio with a beautiful campus as part of Nissan's internationalization efforts during the 1980s. Sono had the NDI team show him the Nissan NX21, a concept car they designed to celebrate Nissan's 75th anniversary. It was a wedge-shaped two-door car with a sloping rear hatch and a defined rear deck that was somewhere between a family sedan and a grand tourer. Sono was particularly interested in some of the NX21's early sketches and models, which had more rounded corners and lines. It was about this time that Nissan's leadership changed, and the new president of Nissan, Yutaka Kume, unveiled his plan of action for moving Nissan forward. Project 901, or the 901 Plan, was a set of goals to make Nissan the most technologically advanced Japanese automobile manufacturer by 1990. No expense would be spared to achieve this goal. 901 cars would be luxurious in both comfort and engineering. And the 901 plan coincided with what we now refer to today as the Japanese bubble economy, before the bubble burst and led to the lost decade of the 1990s. Project UZ, the project codename for the Z32, was one of the first production vehicles to be designed using CAD software on a Cray 2 supercomputer. The UZ team discussed making the next Z-Car a mid-engine sports car. And again, I believe this is where the Mid-4 concept may have overlapped, but ultimately decided to stick with the front-engine rear-wheel drive layout to continue the Z-Car lineage as it existed. In particular, Yamada believed that they could maximize driving comfort with an engine in the front. He said, "We wanted the 300ZX to be appreciated by a wide spectrum of customers all over the world. And a high-performance car with a midship engine layout is appreciated only by those who have higher driving skills. With the FR layout, we can achieve similarly sharp handling and high-speed stability, but with more driving pleasure for everyone." They began to shop around for power plants to use in the Z32, beginning first with an early version of the VQ30, but the engine wouldn't be ready in time for launch with the car. Then they tried the VH45 V8 that was being launched with the Infiniti Q45, but it was too big and they couldn't get it to fit. Ultimately, they came back to the VG30DETT used in the Mid-4 2, and it was here they found a perfect match. If by perfect you mean it fit with no room to spare. It poetically continued the VG series engine in the 300ZX and upped the power to over 300 horses by introducing twin cams and twin turbos. On October 1st, 1986, the Z32 prototype was presented to Nissan management, and the next 300ZX was given the nod of approval. Automobile deaths were on the rise in Japan throughout the 1980s, and the media at the time seized on the opportunity to frame it as a result of wayward youths modifying their cars, driving recklessly, and crashing at high speed. This put pressure on Japanese automobile manufacturers by the Japanese government to stop marketing their vehicles to appeal to street racers. In response, Japanese automakers came together and the so-called Gentleman's Agreement was established in 1988. The group agreed that no car, outside of a few special edition vehicles, would exceed 276 brake horsepower, or 280 horsepower. This would assure the government they were doing everything they could to curtail marketing their cars as road racers. Except that the new 300ZX was already in production by this point. And it made more than 280 horsepower. Nissan would be the first to make the decision that it would market their vehicles as having 276 brake horsepower and simply turn a blind eye when the press or tuners said that they were getting more out of their cars than what was officially stated. Ultimately, basically all manufacturers had 280 horsepower cars, even though they were really pushing well beyond that. But the Japanese government and media was satisfied, or had moved on, and deaths started to decline in the 1990s. Which is generally attributed to better safety tech and engineering, not horsepower ratings on marketing brochures. In February 1989, the Z32 300ZX was unveiled at the Chicago Auto Show, and it was announced that the 1990 model would be available for purchase in April starting at $27,300, equivalent to $70,000 today. While the new 300ZX made a big splash at the event, the spotlight was shared somewhat with the debut of the Mazda MX-5 and Acura NSX. Still, Yamada would not be deterred. He was proud of his team's accomplishment, and he knew that the Z32 was a legend in the making. He said at its unveiling, "The 300ZX is the materialization of excitement. The excitement of sight. The excitement of touch. The excitement of driving." He wasn't wrong. It quickly put the Z-Car back in favor of longtime fans who thought Nissan had lost their way. Motor Week said of it, "Sports car enthusiasts can once again take the Z-Car seriously." But most people were introduced to the new Z-Car during Super Bowl 24, when an ad for the car directed by Ridley Scott aired.
So I'm having this dream. I'm in a Turbo Z. And these guys are after me. But they can't catch me. So they get a car. But they can't catch me. So they get a plane. Just as they're about to catch me, the twin turbos kick in.
It would only ever be aired once, despite going viral, which was quite an achievement before the internet. Nissan got cold feet, worrying that the commercial promoted street racing, which, yeah, outrunning a jet kind of does. Still, people were talking about the Z-Car again. And this time, they were excited. The second generation of the Nissan 300ZX, also known by its model code Z32, is the fourth generation of the Z-Car and was sold between the 1990 and 1996 model years. Like its predecessors, it was a front-engine, rear-wheel drive FR coupe that came in two body styles. A two-seat 2+0 with a 55 front, 45 rear weight distribution ratio, and a four-seat 2+2 with a 53 front, 47 rear ratio. The two-seat model was 169.5 inches long and 70.5 inches wide, making it shorter overall than the Z31 it replaced, but a couple of inches wider. It was approximately 3,350 pounds. The 4-seat model added an additional 10.5 inches in length and 90 pounds of weight. Under the hood was a VG30DE engine, either naturally aspirated at 222 horsepower or paired with twin turbochargers that bumped that number up to 300. Hallmark traits to identify a Z32 are the large sloping C-pillar, enclosed rectangular headlights, quad-tip dual exhaust, and its overall wide stance. Included standard were anti-lock brakes, a viscous coupled limited slip differential, and a 3-way regulated catalytic converter that caused the Z32 to require 91 octane or higher gasoline. All Z32s came with a set of iconic 5-spoke wheels that were designed to specifically cool the brake rotors using airflow dynamics. The interior received a complete overhaul, with the biggest change being the removal of the pod gauges at the top of the center console. The Z32 is the only Z-Car to not have these, and it's considered one of their major flaws, even if not really crucial to vehicle operation. Thankfully, aftermarket options exist. Unlike previous generations, the difference between the 2+0 and the 2+2 is almost imperceptible. The designers worked hard to hide almost a foot in overall length, and they succeeded. The easiest way to spot the difference is to look at the location of the fuel door. If it's in the front of the rear axle, it's a 2-seater. If it's behind, it's a 4-seater. And if it's a slick top, it's always a 2-seater, as they never sold a 4-seat model with a hardtop. Turbocharged models also had a few additional options that will give them away, specifically the inlets on the front air dam, the rear spoiler, a 2-mode adjustable suspension switch, and Nissan's Supra 4-wheel steering system that turned the rear wheels to assist the front wheels with sharp cornering. This was another piece of technology brought over from the mid-4 too.
Oh yeah!
The Z32 never saw any major facelifts during its 7-year run, but it did have several incremental changes that help you identify a specific model year. The 1990 models are the only ones to feature a Nissan decal on the front fascia and no badge on the hood. In 1991, the Nissan decal was removed and a new badge similar to the Nissan badge still used today was added to the hood between the headlights. A new driver's side airbag was added as an optional item that changed the steering wheel from a 3-spoke design to a larger 4-spoke design. Also available for the first time in 1991, a CD player. Nissan had been criticized for years, decades at this point, for not offering the Z-Car as a convertible. But that changed in 1993 when they unveiled the new convertible option for the 300ZX. Aftermarket conversions had existed to fill the demand, with more or less official Nissan support. But this new option, added to the 300ZX by American Specialty Cars in California, was an official convertible that didn't void warranties. It wasn't completely open-top, relying on a central roll bar to maintain rigidity, but it was the closest Nissan had come since the original Fairlady in the 1960s. Yoshihiko Matsuo was said to be particularly happy when the convertible was announced, as he fought hard for the 240Z to be a convertible but ended up losing that fight. In 1994, the duckbill spoiler was given 2 pedestals so that it stood a little off the deck lid, as spoilers began to grow in size during the 1990s. In addition, a passenger side airbag was offered along with keyless entry, and most important, the seat belts were moved from the doors to the pillars. 1995 cars had a single color front bumper instead of a gray strip. And in 1996, OBD2 electronics were introduced, allowing the 1996 300ZXs to be serviced by technicians using OBD2 readers. A special performance collaboration was offered the first year the Z32 went on sale. Built by Motorsports International of Waco, Texas, and designed by Peter Brock of BRE racing fame. It was called the SR71 after the SR71 Blackbird hypersonic jet, and became the 3rd fastest production car in the world, losing only to the Lamborghini Diablo and Ferrari F40, which, yeah, fair. In 1995, Stillen worked with Nissan to produce the Steve Millen Z, or SMZ, that was a high-performance edition available for purchase through Nissan dealerships. They featured cross-drilled Nismo GTR rotors and large calipers, a high-flow intake, a new exhaust, and a boost pressure increase, bringing the total horsepower to 365. It was sort of like a street-tuned car you could buy right from the dealership. The last special edition offered for the 300ZX was the 1996 Commemorative Edition. There weren't any changes to this car versus the standard production vehicles. Instead, the 300 Commemorative Edition 300ZXs were the last 300 cars to roll off the assembly line bound for North America. Each features a small plaque inside to denote which of the 300 it is. Had Project 901 done it? Had Kume created a company philosophy that laser-focused the designers to come up with the best product possible by 1990? Had they thrown enough money at it? By all accounts, they had. The 300ZX was an immediate hit, though the press wasn't sure if they should be so excited or wait for the other shoe to drop. They needn't have worried. Motor Trend said, "This latest iteration puts Nissan back into the fore in world-class sports cars." Road and Track wrote, 5 years ago, if you had said the 300ZX was among the world's best handling cars, you'd have been met with polite laughter. Say it now, and you're simply stating a fact." The consensus was unanimous. The Z-Car was back, and potentially better than ever. Sure, there were nitpicks here and there, but it was either stuff that came with driving a high-performance sports car, or stuff that could be fixed later on. Motor Trend awarded the 300ZX its 1990 Import Car of the Year. Automobile Magazine gave it its 1990 Design of the Year award. And then Nissan sold its 1 millionth Z-Car in the United States. And Car and Driver put the Z32 on its 10 best list that year. It would remain on the magazine's 10 best list every year through 1996. Among the praises and sales milestones, Toyota watched with some concern. They had been prepared to release their next generation of the Supra, the A80 Mark IV, just a year after the Z32's debut, but decided to delay the A80's release until May 1993 to reduce comparisons that might be drawn between the two cars. But the Z32 didn't have just PR wins and sales wins, it had racing wins. A Cunningham Racing GTS Class 300ZX won the 1994 24 Hours of Daytona, the first race in that year's IMSA GT Championship. The Cunningham team would go on to win the overall GTS Championship that season using the car. And they didn't stop with 24 Hours of Daytona. The Cunningham 300ZX won at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, coming in first in the GTS class and just 5th overall. And there's one Z32 that still holds a speed record today. The June Blitz Bonneville Z32 was a special engineered Z32 with a VG30DE TT that set a land speed record of 419.84 kilometers an hour, more than 260 miles per hour, in the 1991 Bonneville Speed Trial EBMS class. That record remains unbroken more than 30 years later. There seemed to be no limit to Japanese prosperity in the 1980s. Japan dominated the world's economy and technological research. The 8 largest banks were Japanese, and those banks used their power to control Japan's industrial output. But something seemed wrong, even when the Japanese stock market was setting all-time highs. The Japanese economy was being driven by rampant speculation and low interest rates, especially in real estate. Many entrepreneuring individuals were buying multiple properties to use as rentals. As a result, individual and corporate debt began to grow, and experts began to sound the alarm that things couldn't continue. On January 1st, 1990, the very first day of the 1990s, the Japanese stock exchange suffered its worst single-day loss in over 20 years, and it began a process of economic collapse and stagnation that we now refer to today as the lost decade. It wasn't all lost at once, however, and for a while it seemed like things could be turned around. But car manufacturers were alarmed at the sales they were seeing, particularly for sports cars, which tended to be the sort of things that people cut from their budgets first. For Nissan, that meant the new 300ZX they had just launched, and not just in Japan. The first year of the Z31, 1984, consumers in the US purchased almost 74,000 300ZXs. By 1989, the last year of the Z31, those US sales had dropped to around 4,000 units. Not unexpected. The last model year typically sells low, as buyers who can wait choose to do so to get the next new model about to come out. Sales for the 1990 Z32 jumped up to just over 39,000. Nissan had planned for it to be a little lower overall than the Z31, as production costs required a higher price tag, but they felt the end product was worth it, standing by their new sports car. But the burst of the Japanese economic bubble meant that those price tags continued to jump up, and not insignificantly. And production slowed. 17,500 in 1991 Z32 sold, and a year later, it was less than half that. Plus, the Z had competition. The Supra wasn't going to be delayed forever, and it burst into the US market along with the celebrated FD RX-7, the W20 MR2, the Acura NSX, and the Mitsubishi 3000 GT. And that doesn't even include downmarket offerings like the Integra, Miata, Civic Si, and Celica, who were legends in their own right. Basically, there were too many sports cars, and they all cost too much money. Yutaka Kume, president of Nissan, stepped down in 1992 and was replaced by Yoshifumi Tsuji, who vowed to get Nissan back on track. Nissan was toying with the idea of moving the 300ZX to the Infiniti lineup when it got news that the US government was requiring new strength regulations for side impacts by 1997. Regulations that the 300ZX would never be able to comply with because of its engineering. And sales continued down. Less than 5,000 sold in 1994. Work on the next Z-Car hadn't even begun in earnest, with just a few exploratory efforts. And what they had would have to be changed by these new US regulations. Was it even worth it? It was decided then that the 1996 300ZX would be the last Z-Car. A total of 3,000 1996 Z32s were delivered to the US, of which the last 300 were considered commemorative edition cars. They retailed between $37,000 for a base model two-seater and $44,600 for a convertible, or in 2025 dollars, $77,000 and $93,000 respectively. And that was it. With little fanfare, Z-Car was done. This story doesn't end on a sad note, however. The Z32 was special to Nissan. In 1996, Nissan USA began an ad campaign to rehabilitate the image of Mr. K as the father of the Z-Car, after Nissan leadership of the 1970s had tried to sweep Katayama under the rug. The ads featured a mysterious elderly man who bore a striking resemblance to Mr. K and his dog. Often, the man would be spotted next to a bright yellow 240Z similar to Mr. K's. It actually was Mr. K's 240Z. Magical things would happen when the mystery man was around, and the commercials would end with "Enjoy the ride" superimposed over the Nissan badge. They were a big hit, improving Nissan's brand awareness by 30% and its likability by 100%. They also served to bring attention to Mr. K and his legacy with the Z-Car, just as the Z-Car was ending in America. Everyone wanted to know who this mysterious man was. In 1998, Mr. K was inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame for his determination to get the Z-Car made, a recognition he was long overdue, among many other achievements during his time as president of Nissan USA. Nissan realized trying to dismiss Katayama had been the wrong move and began to wholly embrace him. He was happy for the opportunity to share his personal philosophy: love cars, love people, and love life. Mr. K passed away in 2015, a celebrated figure in the Z-Car community, where he was an active member right up to the end. The Z32 was special to Nissan, and it remains special to fans all these years later. The Z32 was often considered an overlooked 90s legend, one of the Japanese imports that was forgotten from lists of best cars of all time. But people who knew, knew. In 2004, Automobile Magazine listed the Z32 as one of its 100 greatest cars of all time. And in 2010, GQ listed it as one of the most stylish cars of the last 50 years. It certainly had style. Enough so that in 1999, when Lamborghini wanted to replace the pop-up headlights on the Diablo, they turned to the Nissan Z32. Look familiar? Those are Z32 headlights. The Z32 was actually produced up to 2000 in Japan, and it continued to make appearances in so many video games over the years, either as the 300ZX or as the Fairlady Z. It's no longer an overlooked legend, and it rightfully takes its place alongside other 90s legends like the Supra and RX-7. YouTube has helped keep the community alive into the 21st century, and Z32 owners are now all too happy to share their car using their channels. I guess kind of like this video. In some ways, it feels like the Z32 is more popular now than ever. So we come to the end of the Z-Car. Or at least the end for a little while. For Nissan, the Z32 was the culmination of every effort it had to finally marry luxury and performance, knowing that it could do so only if given the chance by favorable market conditions. Owners of the car today have a little piece of history that may never be truly replicated. A slice of that brief window when Nissan took a shot at the moon. And they succeeded, despite low sales and a shaky company outlook that followed. But it's hard to keep a good thing down, and by the end of the millennium, Nissan was already cooking up a successor to the Z32, the Z33. Thank you for watching this episode. If you're new here and enjoyed this, please consider hitting like and subscribe. I try to make a new episode every few weeks, so subscribing is a great way to know when a new episode drops. As always, a big thanks to the Make and Model Patreon, helping me work toward doing this full time. We also have channel members now, so thank you to those who have signed up. I'm eager to see your badges upgrade over time here in the YouTube comments. I really cannot thank you enough for your support. Founding member stickers should start going out by the end of next month. If you'd like to let me know that you made it to the end of the video and help with the algorithm, why not leave a UFO emoji in the comments? A UFO because the Z32 was described as a spaceship when it came out. I kind of see it. Until next time. Beautiful.